I think you're exactly right. It's just a long game, right? And that's a lot of the argument we might have had to make in the beginning too. And one of the things I think AIA does well is help follow up after the tour. I know they have meetings and sessions for the architects after to look at the number of visitors, compare all of that across the board. So I think there's a good sharing of knowledge.
Today in the Curious Builder podcast, we had Jen and Sarah in, and it was really great. So the AIA Minnesota Homes by Architect Tour has been going on 18 years now. And as it comes up here on the 27th of September, I wanted to bring on some local ambassadors and fans of architecture here in Minnesota, talk about what it is to help start a tour, to run a tour, and have it be successful. Without further ado, here is Jen and Sarah. Welcome to the Curious Builder podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today I have two very special guests. I've got Jen Veralle and Sarah Witcher from Chisel Architecture. Sarah and Marcy were on episode 125 just a handful of episodes ago. Welcome back to the studio, Sarah.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Or as you're known amongst just me, Woolly Mittens. So we're here today to talk about the AIA Minnesota Homes by Architect Tour. It's coming up on its 18th year. It's coming up at the end of this month, the 27th and 28th of September. And I was just really curious. I mean, I've had, homes in the Prada homes and the artisan homes my entire career as a builder. My parents did the Prada homes, back when it started way back. And actually Minnesota has the oldest tour in the country. It's 75 years old is the Prada homes. That's how old it is.
Wow.
So we are very well conditioned to do parades. You talk to a friend of mine, Brad Levitt down in Arizona. They have no parade tour in Arizona, and they have a massive population. So it takes a lot of organization, a lot of buy-in from the community, and of course, the builders and or architects or designers or whichever entity is putting it on. And so I thought we'd just start a little bit with, you guys can introduce yourselves a little bit about what you do, and then we'll dive into kind of how you start a tour, how you run a tour. I'm just very interested in it, and we'll just kind of go from there. So Sarah, why don't you start first?
Let's see. Sarah Witcher, 5'7".
Oh, yeah.
Feisty rower.
Yeah.
Yes.
I entered into the architecture field later in life. I was on a path to work in the arts. So I worked at the Walker Art Center. I worked at Northrop Auditorium. Then I kind of flipped and started to work at the Bush Artist Fellowship program, where we were giving money to artists. And at that time, my husband and I had our first child. And when she was born, I just thought, I've always wanted to go to architecture school. So now's the time. So went back to architecture school later in life and just loved it so much. And a lot of my mentors and professors were at the University of Minnesota and worked at Sala Architects. And I wanted to work at Sala Architects. So I kept banging on the door. Hello.
Hello. Take me. What about me? What about me?
And it took me a year, but then I got in and worked there for, I think it was 13, 15 years.
Oh, that long. Wow.
Yeah, long time. Had a wonderful time. And then worked for another firm and was there for about 3 years, and then decided to, with Marcy Townsend, open up our own firm. So we are in our 7th year.
Amazing.
So,
congratulations.
yeah,
7 years is no joke.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, excellent. Well, how about you, Jen?
Oh, yeah. So Jen Veralle had come to architecture by way of marketing, actually. I had always had an interest in architecture as a child and watched my dad build things. And actually, in 7th grade, was very interested in architecture. And I had a professor who said, you belong in the home ec class. It's all men here. That was my first kind of experience with wanting to be involved in architecture and sort of being shut down. So years later, in my late 20s, came to work for the American Institute of Architects. And that was a really awesome solution for my love of architecture and also marketing. So I was in that role as the communications director for about 10 years. And through that time was really an advocate for residential architecture. I just felt like the connection to home, the home environment, and the stories that the homeowners would tell, after living in their homes was just so inspiring. So as part of the residential committee, that's how Sarah and I came together. And years later, fast forward, after leaving the American Institute of Architects, I had become kind of my own solo entrepreneur. And when Chisel was opening their doors 7 years ago, Sarah knocked. and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing and about time that you venture out on your own. So I stepped in to support in a marketing role and have been with the firm ever since.
Amazing. Now, when did you first meet? Do you recall what year that was? Or?
Ooh, that would have been
It
probably
was 2 years before the tour.
Yeah, so 2005.
2005. Yeah.
Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about
20
starting.
years ago? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Isn't
Yeah.
that amazing?
Years ago.
What?
What?
Yeah. Amazing.
Wow.
So at that, it's kind of, 18 years have passed. So like going back to the beginning, there is no architect tour. So in Minnesota, there is a builder tour, just the Parade of Homes actually at that time. The artisan tour had not been born yet. I don't know if the luxury
right.
home tour had been at that time. Probably not. So,
don't think so.
what made you decide to start? Was it you specifically? Was it the industry? Like how did your involvement with the kind of the startup of this architecture led tour?
Yeah, well, I will say from the residential committee liaison at AI Minnesota that the ideas kept bubbling up. And there was this, look at the Parade of Homes all the time. And the architects would be like, oh, we don't necessarily fit with that model, nor would we put one of our homes on the parade, given the model it was. So there was always this sense of wanting to have something of their own. And then I'll let Sarah tell the rest of the story of the players involved at the time.
Yeah, so Mark Nessett was the chairman of the residential committee, and he and Dale Mulfinger had traveled down to Texas, and I can't remember what city they went to, but they came back and were talking about this architects tour. And so I remember that I'm going to zoom forward. Dale was telling me about this at one of the Sala open house, and he was talking about this tour, showing me pictures of some of the things that they had seen. And I said, oh my God, I've always been interested in the parade and, all the tours, and because we have such a healthy tour environment here. And so Dale just said, great, and kind of
Here you go. Here's the baton.
here's the first meeting, and he was there.
For
but
sure.
that's when I met Jen. So I showed up for that first meeting, and we just kind of hit the ground running.
Yeah, and it took years. It
took
wasn't
years.
just a one and done. It was 3 years in the making, from probably the initial discussion to the actual first tour in 2008.
Yep.
One of the easy is the wrong word, but one of the benefits of being a solopreneur, like Jen and I, you have a partner, is that, you look in the mirror and you're like, do I want to do this? And you're like, yep. And then you do it. And so in some ways it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Partnerships get a little bit harder because you have another person. You start getting more and more people involved. And now if you represent a community, I can only imagine sort of how difficult it might be to start something. Talk us a little bit through, at this point, basically the AI is having you kind of being tasked to sort of, present ideas, I'm guessing, and sort of provide some leadership and come back. Do they have a committee? Do they have a board? How does this start from idea? It takes 3 years before the first tour. Let's talk about starting. Like, how do you start?
Yeah, well, I think your observation of it needing a buy-in from a very large community is true. So the AIA at that time, one of the largest chapters in the country.
Minnesota, you mean?
Yeah, Minnesota.
Really?
2,000 plus members that get all of their CE from, the organization, and a small percentage of that as residential architects. So the larger percentage that we would represent was commercial. Right. And when you look at a budget and how much, you're putting toward each kind of group within that architect community, the residential architect was a small number. So that's why we had to really advocate and push forward and make a lot of kind of case studies for what we were seeing. And at the time, the magazines were starting to come to us. We want to cover more, like Midwest Home at the time was like, we want to do more with you. We've got all of this. And they actually were quite the visionaries for it too, and provided like a printed glossy publication to kind of, take away the idea that we would have to produce the whole tour in its entirety. So we had some interesting partners that were interested in supporting that. And so that was part of the challenge, is going in front of not only the board, which was 20 some individuals at the time that were a small percentage of residential architects, mostly larger commercial firms. And then, making the case study that even awareness in just the residential piece of it would draw interest in just general commercial architecture in the community itself.
Is there, and there's just a little tangent, but more my curiosity, how many architects are licensed in Minnesota? Is it still 2,000 or is it more? Any idea?
That's
a
don't
good
have
question.
Any idea,
Yeah, I have no
actually,
idea.
having stepped away from AIA for a while.
So,
but, yeah.
okay, so we'll have to follow up on that one. We don't have a fact check on this podcast. Good thing.
I don't want to say anything.
I'd be
that's not
canceled
correct.
immediately.
Yeah.
So let's just call it a couple thousand. Any idea percent-wise how many are residential versus commercial?
Well, no. And I would say also, like, the size of commercial firms, if you looked at the number of firms, that's one thing. But then the other number is individual architects within those two firms. I don't know, 25% or less. It's smaller.
For residential. Where I'm going with this question is, A, to identify how many architects are in the residential space. We've spoken to other architects around the country about how, well, we won't go, that's a whole other episode, but really just trying to understand, you have a smaller bucket, because let's just say at the time in 2008 that you started, let's just say you accounted for 10%. I don't know. Does that seem
smaller? Yes.
Yeah, your budget is a lot smaller because
Right.
you represent a smaller group, and so you're trying to go to them and say, "Hey, we need 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, whatever the number was, whatever the ask was," and they're like, "Okay, well, we have other budgeting needs as well." And so I'm just trying to get an idea, because most tours, they're the lion's share. Like by comparison, the builders, like they're all builders.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so
100% in.
and
Yeah.
so it's why wouldn't you? And so I was just trying to drop some comparisons there.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the other piece is that the commercial firms often, with the AIA Minnesota Honor Awards would get recognition. And there were certain things that commercial architects, received from the organization. But it felt like the residential there was just more interest from the public on that side of it.
See, I think you caught it on there because, there's a huge interest in just the consumer. And correct me, I have not asked this question to architects, but if I was to draw a Venn diagram, I'll do it for you now, of three areas. We've got designers, we've got architects, and we've got builders. Every market's going to be different across the country. I'm biased because I'm a builder. You're somewhat biased because you're architects, and designers aren't here, so they're underrepresented. But based on, this is my perception, you tell me if you think this tracks or not. I think that in the world we live in right now, with social media being extremely strong, say the last 6 to 7 years, and everyone is sort of interested in a home because most people have a home or they're interested in like remodeling, or they want to make it. They're always constantly you look at the proliferation of HGTV over the last 2 decades, and just in general, people's gravitating towards all forms of anything that has to do with the home. I feel that designers are gaining more market share over architects and builders only from this standpoint because it seems more attainable, regardless of where you factor in on whether you can afford a new home or hire an architect to build a new home. A designer could be, I'm going to do new pillows, I'm going to decorate a room, I'm going to remodel it. So it seems more approachable to the masses. Where I'm going with this is that people drive the business. You guys in 2008 identified that the public was very interested in residential architecture. That's why it took off. And I feel like with those groups, I think right now we're in this melding pot where we see architects and designers and builders all coming together way more synergistically than I've been told in the past. And I think a lot of it has to do because that's what the public is wanting and expecting and seeing. Do you think, what hits home there?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I mean, you see a lot of the kind of the design build and everything is under one roof. I do think that traditional method of having the architect, the contractor, and the client is still very much alive.
Oh, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, I've never done it where it is a design build. I was mainly speaking to like the average person, if they're scrolling through a magazine or an ad, like they can relate to like an image or to, hey, I would like that. I want to consume that.
Yeah.
Whether it's a
Right.
home tour, just because you come through a home tour doesn't mean you can build. I mean,
Right.
every builder will tell
Well,
you that
it's
you have to quickly identify when people come through the tour who are real leads and who are not. And my mom was a designer, my dad was a builder, and I was always taught to be very hospitable to anybody that's come through. But there's also only so many time in the day, and we are a for-profit business. When people are coming into the door, like you're quickly trying to identify who wants to build a home. No different than when they're coming through the tour of the Homes by Architects tour. Like who needs an architect? Pick me.
Right.
Like
Well,
that's the whole point.
And I think everyone has a home,
Yeah.
right? And the other thing that comes to mind is we try to appease the commercial side of the architect community by having like open, when projects were revealed that were commercial in the community, and there just wasn't that much interest because it's a more B2C versus B2B. Just that distinction is just different. So
yeah, I think there's a lot of passion when it's so personal.
yeah, for sure.
A compliment I think the rest of, not the world, but I feel like our industry is catching up on. I feel like architects in general, in my opinion, are better storytellers and are better at capturing the people's interest through images. I feel like now, over the last 5-10 years, designers and builders have caught up because they're finally understanding how to use it. But if you look back, early on, print publications were coming to you, and I've always been, I was too immature in my career to understand this. But when I used to first build a house, I'd take 100 photos and I'd dump all 100 photos on, there'd be empty houses, no furniture, just, hey, I built a house.
Not
right?
styled.
Look what I did.
Yeah, look what I did. Because and that was 20 years ago, so I was a different builder than it. But now I have a whole nother I think architects are way better at brand and storytelling. And I've become obsessed with that over the last couple of years because, you go to most of the publications and most of the entries, and it's, Jen, you're in, writing, copywriting, right? Like the storytelling, how you connect with buyers is super critical. And that story, it's like there'd be this one great image in a story and people really get into the story. And you go to your website, Sarah, and you'll have 1 or 2, 3, 4 images, but not 100, because you kind of want to leave something for them. You want to call to action. You want them to say, hey, I love this, ABC house, and I'd love to, the dragon. I'd love to know more about the dragon plan. Could I sit down with you to see it? And that was, I just feel like your field and your industry was either taught that or you're far ahead of where the average builder is and where the designers. That's my observation. I don't know if you've seen that when you look at print ads or when you see stories from other people that you're thinking, oh man, I think the architecture field does a really good job of that. I guess is my observation.
Nice. Well, Jen does Jen does all the website. Jen and Kevin.
Yeah.
Kudos to Jen and Kevin.
Just thinking about the way that storytelling, appears on the website and with Chisel and all their projects, it is to create curiosity and an avenue in and make it accessible. And I think, by not showing everything, you're telling, your consumer that you can create your own custom home and it's your story that we want to elevate. And it's not 100 pictures from a project that a builder or someone has done where, your consumer is calling and saying, I want exactly that. Right. So it's just, it's all custom and it feels like storytelling.
Yeah. So going back, I took us on a little detour there. Thank you for that detour. So we're back in 2008. It's this 3-year period. And just because I want to talk about a bunch of other things, we will spend so much time here. So what was that like? What are you going to the board with? What was your major hurdles? Was it funding? Was it consensus? Was it demographics? How far do you go? Price range? How do you establish? It all seems very common. Now you know what it is, but back then, how did you give shape to this? You wanted a tour. Dale said, hey, here's the baton, go make it happen. What were those? Give us the short version on the 3 years here to make it happen.
I'll start with the first that comes to mind is fairness across the board. Anytime you you have to select a few homes to be on the tour. Is it representative of the entire population? So we had models within AIA for honor awards. We've had juries and we wanted the projects to meet a certain criteria. And that was a huge part of what the obstacles were in the beginning, because we were how do we assess that what we're putting out there meets the high standards and communicates that architects have all this training and this is how you work with an architect. So there was a huge reason to also educate the public. Yeah. So it was that education that became how are we going to do that? And then the other piece of how are we going to be fair and allow certain homes in, but maybe have to say no to others that might not have met that criteria.
This episode is brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors. I've used Pella for 21 years as the exclusive window company on every one of my builds. When people ask me who I trust for windows and doors, it's Pella, every time. Their craftsmanship, their innovation, the top-tier service make them a no-brainer for any custom home builder or designer who demand the best. Whether you're designing something bold or building something with timeless elegance, Pella has you covered. They're also the only window company that has a lifetime warranty on all of their windows. I've gotten to know all of their people at Pella Corporate, as well as locally here at Pella Northland. I'm proud to call them our partners and our friends. Visit Pella.com to learn more and connect with your local reps today. Also, for more information, you can listen to episode 1, where I interview their founders, as well as episode 109, where we talk about the innovation at Pella. This episode is brought to you by Adaptive. If you're still chasing checks and juggling spreadsheets, it's time to upgrade. Adaptive is revolutionizing how builders get paid with AI-powered bill pay, automated draws, one-click payments, and built-in lien waivers. Faster payments, fewer headaches, and total visibility. Adaptive takes care of the back-end chaos so you can focus on what you do best, building. We've used Adaptive for 2.5 years and trust them to keep our projects moving and payments flowing. Learn more at adaptive.build and simplify the pay process today. For more information, you can also listen to episode 10 and episode 15. Out of curiosity, how many homes will be on tour this fall?
There'll be 8. Is it
17?
18? Oh, 17
now.
17. And how many submitted?
Good question. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know that.
Yeah.
Oh,
But one dropped out. We do know that. It was 18,
Yeah.
but we don't know that.
We don't know.
I mean, more than 18, 20, 30, 40, or
Yeah, well, the
completely
first year, did we have 28 the very first
we
year?
had
So we had like a
28 homes.
backlog.
Yeah.
For 3 years, everyone was like, when can we submit? So I don't really think we turned anyone
We didn't turn
away.
anyone down that
Yeah.
first year, but we did have a jury.
Yeah.
We brought people in to look at the floor plans and look at the photos,
Yep.
look at the submissions, and so very formal. And
Yeah. And then we mapped everything out, making sure we had representation as much as we could from all around the Twin Cities, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And we had to make the case that we would get a core number of homes, on the
To
tour.
make it viable.
Right.
100%.
Right.
You got to hit critical mass. Otherwise, it's, I've been a part of that. I mean,
Yeah.
just as a contrast, just because it's what I can speak to, like the Artisan Home Tour, when it started, I think I was year 2 or 3 when it started, or maybe year 1, doesn't matter. But like you need 12, 13 to be operational. And, from an entry fee, like what they charge the builder or what they charge the architects, looking at, your one weekend, your fees from my point of view seem very low.
Oh my gosh. Were they
very
like
low.
50 in the
it was
beginning?
$50. Yeah.
$50? Yeah. Okay. Maybe someone on your team should have talked about economics because
Well, that's where we're like sponsors. We can get the sponsors.
We can get the sponsors.
And then we
yeah.
had to sort of prove out,
it worked.
that sponsors were interested. Like, Marvin Windows.
Marvin
And some
Windows.
of the big ones were like 100% yes. So once
Right.
we got those yeses, there was a lot of confidence that
Yeah.
we were celebrating behind the scenes.
That's amazing. Yeah, and it's also, value. I mean, like anything, as the price comes up, so do expectations. Like, where do you market? Where do you put the money? How do you advertise it? And I think when people know what to look, or I have some people that I know that are like, every single year they're like, we're going to the Homes by Architect tour, and they'll say their normal things like it's unique, it's different, all the things that you would expect,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Right.
And like it depends on what you're looking for, right? I always say that you need a healthy ecosystem, just like the ocean. You need little plankton, we need tuna, we need great white sharks, we need whales, we need seahorses, we need
diversity.
Yeah.
we're just
for
gonna talk
sure.
about the ocean for the rest of this podcast. But like same with like you just need a whole scale, and there's kind of a place for all of them depending on what your niche is, because people are so different on what they want. And so anyway, just being a fan of architecture in general and just loving good work, it's like, okay, great, I want to see this tour. You know what? I've actually never been able to make the AIA tour. This will be the first year I make it.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I've always either been out of town,
Wow.
or I didn't even know it was around, and it would
my
be like it's
gosh.
one weekend. I'm like, oh, I'm gone that weekend. It's one weekend.
Yeah.
That is kind of a problem for me. It's like one weekend
Yeah.
is like really isolates it to
Right.
like, you better save the date,
Right. Not even
Yeah.
a Thursday or Friday.
No,
It's
right, it's-
literally Saturday, Sunday.
and
yeah.
it's over. It's over
Yeah.
fast.
So you get to go this year.
I'm gonna go this year.
Have you mapped out your
I have not.
your
We'll help
path?
you. Start
Yeah, we'll
at
help
home
you.
number 8.
Yeah. I'll bring the kids. You already met Tate. He was downstairs, so
Yes.
maybe I'll bring my chief
Nice.
hooligan. Okay, so you launched it in year 1. You had 18 the first year?
28.
28. Oh, wow. I thought you deferred some of them. Amazing.
And it was from,
Yeah.
if we think about the spread, it was Medina to, was it
Stillwater?
Stillwater? Yeah, and then I can't remember up north, it was Ali Awad.
By the way, great year
Yeah.
to start a tour.
Yeah, and Egan.
And Egan. Yeah,
it
we
was.
were. So we had that
Right.
zone.
It was.
2008, just
Right.
awesome time.
Just awesome.
Way
Yeah.
to go.
No, luckily we had it all locked in before.
Well, it was because October
was-
is when it
yeah,
crashed.
Yeah.
So
it was
they
like-
had the tour. Everyone was happy. And then
So
the
happy.
wheels came off the bus.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All those leads.
So, yeah. So let's talk about that. How did the first couple of years go? What were some lessons learned? What didn't go well? I was like, right now we're doing a series called Losers Are Winners. And I always find that you learn more from losing.
True.
What are some things that early on did not work and you cut it? And what are some things that are still there
gosh.
today that you're like, oh man, that worked then and it still works now?
I would say just because we had 3 years of a runway to get it right, we were meticulous about all the details. I mean, we had signage made, we had setup, we had good communications. We did a lot right, I think, right from the get-go that is still like in place today. And this is the first year Chisel will have a home on the tour. And we're like seeing all of this now from the lens
From
of
the user point of view.
Yeah. So a lot of things we did really well.
We did.
Yeah. Do you have any,
I don't remember anything that we
that
kind
was-
of pulled out.
other than the surprises of where people start? They like to start at home number 1.
Do they really?
Right. Yeah, a
And
lot of people do.
we
work their way through.
We just thought people would start kind of where
Where
they
they're
live and
closest.
go, but
funny.
yeah. So just
So how
little
does that change your
nuances.
number pattern? Do you start like in the city because you have higher
Not
demographics?
necessarily.
Or not?
We just needed to be prepared with staffing and then also the booties. Remember, we didn't have
Yeah,
enough.
the booties was a
the
problem
first
for us. Well, the other thing that was a big thing that I don't know how we thought about it, but how we rethought about it, but was the single ticket sale. So you could pay I think it was $10
so.
to get into one home. And it was Charles Stinson's home over by Cedar Lake that just went,
as a single home visit.
as a single
Yeah.
home visit, it went bonkers and we ran out of money. Remember, we didn't have enough change.
This was before Venmo. This
Jen-
was before Tap to Pay.
Yeah,
I mean,
we
You
were
ran
like,
out of water 'cause you
you
couldn't
need
change.
to get over here with some cash.
Because you could just say, hey, we only take
We
exact
didn't
change.
we didn't have. Well, you purchased your tickets
yeah.
prior,
Online.
or you could come
and they were
pay
mailed
cash.
to you
Yeah.
if you purchased them in
Yeah.
advance. Well, and we also didn't have MapQuest, Google Maps, any of that. So Sarah, she had a navigator. I did not. Her mom
Yeah.
was always there with the printed maps. And
Like the
Yeah.
Hudson map books or what?
Yeah,
I
my
don't know.
mom.
What did she use?
No, my mother. My mom had some. My mother always drove me around.
and you had-
remember? Yeah.
you told her where to go.
Chauffeur. I like
Yeah,
that.
it was so nice and so kind of her.
Um,
A different time.
Different.
Totally
yes.
different time.
So throughout the years now, what were some significant milestones that sort of happened, either from recognition or did you ever have other states that kind of say, oh, wow, we want to start this? Like how many states when you started would have had a Homes by Architect
yeah.
tour and how many, just as a general idea, do you think there are now in the country?
Well, I would say, right, Mark Nessett was the first one that kind of was doing his research in the country. And at the national level, there is a residential architect committee. And so that's where he was kind of getting all the intel and the conversations and the tours that were happening around the country. I don't personally remember how many he would have went to, but I mean, we weren't the first, but that model,
Well, the one in Texas.
Texas,
sounds like,
yeah, that he looked at that we drew a lot of insight from. But I don't know how far that's went since.
I don't know either.
Okay.
It's a good question.
That's the follow-up
Yeah.
interview.
Right.
Yeah.
With National AIA.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just mainly curious from perspective. I mean, I don't know it for builders, so it's not. I guess it.
Right. One of the big things that happened that year was because Jen and I had to go to the board quite often to ask for money, give them updates on
Here's a
where
hint.
we were
You should
going.
have charged more than $50.
Oh my God. Well, no, that was literally the
Think about
committee,
that.
right?
50
Saying,
times
We
28.
don't want to burden our residential architects with anything because they have to like staff and do all the other
Right.
expenses.
Yeah.
So you just wanted it for the tour's sake.
Easy.
That totally makes
We
sense from
wanted
a
it,
branding
yes, but
standpoint.
yeah.
I get
Yeah.
that.
But we went to the board quite a bit and always were a little frightened about what they were going to say. And I don't think that they thought it was going to go, although we had some good cheerleaders on that board.
You did have advocates.
Yeah.
yes.
And at the end of that first year tour, I think we kind of crushed it. And we had a big number there at the end. We had actually made money.
For sure.
So-
and
Oh, from ticket sales, you mean?
Yeah.
and media attention. I mean, AIA for commercial really wasn't like we weren't highlighting commercial projects that won or were award winning. We weren't really doing anything in the media. And we had all the major TV stations come out to be on site and talk about it. And I think some of the commercial architects were just like, oh, wow, this is really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool.
Look at this little child just grow all by itself.
I know.
Yeah. It's amazing. What, as you've sort of progressed, like, what do you hear from the people that come through? Like, what stands out in terms of, like, when people come, like, especially those early years, like, was there a hunger? Was it the same crowd that you saw at the parade and the Artisan? Was it different? Like, speak a little bit to the people that are showing up to these.
Well, really, people came from all over the place. It was interesting because I do remember this one couple from St. Louis, and they come up every year to the tour. But people from all over, because they had to pay, all over the country. They had to pay to come to the tour, which at that point was that different with the parade, because you didn't have to pay for the parade.
You only have to pay for, like, a dream home. It goes to a charity.
That's right.
And
It was like $5.
Yeah.
Yep, it still is.
That's
Yeah.
what I
And
remember.
that goes to a
Oh my
housing
gosh.
foundation that helps, all kinds of wonderful
Yeah,
things. And then
that's
the
cool.
Artisan has, you can do single ticket or the tour ticket. So that's
Okay.
also per entry. That's more expensive.
Yeah. People just seem to, because I had gone on a lot of the tours prior to the Homes by Architects tour, people just seem to really slow down. The architects and the staff were always in the homes, and the AIA representation was there as well. But people seem to slow down and ask a lot of questions. Why
Yes.
did they do this? Why did the homeowner do this? It was this nice connection about why did these people who went through this whole process choose to do this? This is so interesting.
Almost like a guided museum visit. Like,
Kind
why
of,
did
like a
Van Gogh paint this way?
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah.
And that's when you articulate it that way. That's what I'm thinking of. Like, you're giving me an art tour.
Yeah. And, the plans are there and, with the architecture firm, and they could pull the plans out and show people, what happened. This is what the architecture firms do. So
Yeah,
it was
and-
just very educational.
Going back to education,
Yes.
which you
Yeah.
mentioned, Jen.
Right. And I would say people would come year after year after year because the process of working with an architect can be longer. They want to talk with the architects if they're thinking about building like a forever home. They may, have lived in a few different places and they're really serious about building new and working with an architect. So that's a different process. But yeah, many people repeat every year, even if they've already had a home built by an architect, and just go because they love design.
I mean, you see the same, not the same people, but the same level of curiosity. Hey, I want to see a home, or I'm interested in this, or I ask a question about that. And it's fun when people are very open about what they're interested in. And so you can sort of react to it. From a managing flow, that's always tricky. I've been part of homes where you have 1,000 people in a day, and it's very challenging, or multiple thousands of people in a day. I mean, obviously you can't talk to that many people. It's kind of overwhelming. You're like a sardine you're a sardine general mushering, little sardines through your tin can.
Right.
So how have you found that architects and staff have sort of helped modulate the people that are interested and want the storytelling, but there's a lot of people, because obviously there's only a handful of people in, they can get more attention, more time.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting question. I mean, I can speak to it now from the home that we have on the tour, Cherry Mash Modern, and the story about this couple, we have really marketed, and it is a very interesting story to tell. And they're not going to be there, so that's another thing. I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but we talked a lot about who was going to be in the home when the tour was going on. And at first we weren't going to have the homeowners there, but then we let them be there. And it ended up to be a great thing to have the homeowners there. They would be sitting there. I remember some of them just sitting in their homes, and they could just answer questions as people walked by. But that turned out to be a really interesting component to the tour.
Yeah. And the homes are lived in, which I think some, spec homes or models maybe don't have that same vibe. So people just are curious about the way other people live. And I think, even I just got a note from Ann Mayhew. She's the chair of the tour committee, and she was saying that in the last couple of years, they added a small projects showcase. So this is like spaces that are 600 feet and less, that a client started just with a bathroom remodel or kitchen remodel and built trust with the architect and now are doing more. So I think it's also reflective of, Mark, like you were saying earlier, just the access to these things. Like you don't have to build the whole house even. And this showcase, I think, has been going for 2 years now, has become another way to create some interest and access.
How early on did you have virtual options? Was that born out of COVID or was that before as well?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a whole, chapter that Anne shared about the pandemic, but I'd have to look at the details.
No worries.
Do you want me to check?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
just mainly just interested. At most tours, again, the only thing I can compare to is like the home builders types of tours. Whether it's Matterport or whether you're selling it, you have the plans. I never like to do that personally because it's like the whole goal for me personally is to interact with you on a personal level.
Right.
Like even all my marketing for the longest time, my marketing goal was I market a lot more now than I ever did before, but I used to never do a full page ad unless there was a call to action, like come to my tour
sure.
home next. Like people are top of mind awareness.
Totally.
If it was June artisan tour, I'd put an ad in May and say, in 30 days is the art, and it'd be, oh yeah, that's right. There's a tour coming up. Oh, I should,
then you can
this.
track
And so
it.
that's because the whole goal is if I can get them into the front door in my home, and I could actually have a couple minutes of your time. That is going to be by far my best chance to have an impression upon you and have a connection. Because I do think people on a base level, we want to connect with people, whether it's architecture, design, whatever it is. Even like how people were drawn to your homeowners having a story. People, I'm sure, remember people's stories about,
sure.
because people are eccentric too. Like sometimes very colorful people, sometimes we design and you're like, that person would be great in the home. And sometimes you're like, oh, that person would not be good in the home. It's so dependent.
So I do have a little update. Virtual tour began during COVID, the pandemic, and then each tour home was scanned with Matterport, and they created like a digital tour of the home, and they've continued to offer that. And Anne is saying that they really like the idea that for people who are unable to go in person or miss a weekend, that you can still experience it virtually. So it's about access. And I think the AIA overall has been really good with moving and changing with media and the virtual tour, and now a smaller project showcase tour. So I just see them continuing to do that.
That's evolving.
Yeah.
They
evolving.
flex.
Yeah, they really do for a very large organization with a lot of opinions.
Yeah, interesting. Have you had any architects that that were a little skeptical that have been sort of won over by the tours? They once they have a home in or they see what it's been done. Early on, was there some objection or not really?
What I hope is that it just drove adoption of it and a desire to want to have a home on the tour, right?
Yeah.
I sense that,
Yeah.
especially, with Chisel now coming on in their 7th year and going to have a home on the tour. The groundwork has been laid for you, and now you have a perfect home with a story and a client that is, it's your turn.
Yeah.
What do architects say after they've had a home on tour? It's always hard. People always ask me, "Hey, Mark, the tour just ended. How many leads did you get? How many?" And I've always told people it takes me about 2 to 3 years before I can tell you if that home was successful or not.
Yeah.
Because as you know, you're going to be 6 months to a year in design, and how long before they come back. And there is something about being consistently public facing, because I have a client now that actually just reached out to me yesterday in an email. They're like, we followed your work for years. We met you at this Hard's Hat Kid tour that I did last year, which was kind of fun. And they're like, we'd love if you could come by and give us some ideas. And so you never know when that little seed was planted. And so it's hard to say really which one was more successful. I think some builders might say, especially if they have a house to sell, of course, it feels good if you sold the home. I've never really had a home on tour, and at least in the last 15 years has been for sale, so I can't speak to that. It's more how many new interests and how many new leads. So I guess the question is what are the architects saying that do have homes on tour? How beneficial is it to their business?
Well, I think you're exactly right. It's just a long game, right? And that's a lot of the argument we might have had to make in the beginning too. And one of the things I think AIA does well is help follow up after the tour. I know they have meetings and sessions for tours after, or for the architects after, to look at the number of visitors, compare all of that across the board. So I think there's a good sharing of knowledge. And then, the AIA has their own publications, so a lot of these homes get published in different ways. But yeah, it's a longer lead time. I mean, Chisel, you know that with any feature or any media, people come to you and say, oh, we saw this years ago. So I think it's just like also just the buzz in the community after a tour.
Yeah.
Right? Don't you think?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
because you'll get calls if you have like some piece that was published on a home that you designed. You get calls and emails all the time, right, Sarah? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you're just anecdotally kind of hearing it and feeling good about it, I guess.
Someone told me this about marketing. You would know this, Jen, but it was like you can be a hunter or you can be a gatherer, or like a planter, right? And so it's like in a marketing standpoint, you kind of need both. Like, when things are slow and you need
Right.
cash flow, like I need to be hunting.
Yeah.
Like I need a deer, I need a buffalo, I need a fish, for whatever analogy you're using here for hunting. And then, but for planting, it's kind of both. It's a brand play. It's, hey, they're consistently out there. I think anyone you talk to, consistency is king. I don't care if it's exercise, marketing, relationships. Consistency trumps almost any other thing. And so I guess training the public to know when it is. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while now, or even if this is your first episode, I talk about the Contractor Coalition Summit all of the time. Our next one is happening November 7th through November 10th in Chicago. And all the details can be found at the contractorcoalitionsummit.com. You've got Brad Levitt, Nick Schiffer, Tyler Grace, Morgan Molitor, and myself will all be there. We've got great content over 3 days. You've got builders from all over the country. Try to get it to about that 30 people number. And we'll have sponsors as well that add a lot of value to each one of these dedicated days where you're talking about contracts and spreadsheets and margin and whether you're doing fixed bid or cost plus, your pre-construction agreements. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. If you haven't been following it yet, you should. The Contractor Coalition Summit Instagram page is giving you a steady diet of the conversations that are being had, a lot of promo reels, a lot of the interviews that I've done personally at Omaha, which was my first Contractor Coalition where I'm part of the leadership. I interviewed all 36 people that attended, and we're going to be unveiling each one of their interviews over the next couple of months. So people that were not able to attend and would like to can kind of get a better idea of the value that builders are getting. So if you're going to sign up and come to Chicago, you can type in the promo code Curious Builder and get $2,500 off, and we'll see you in Chicago. Has it always been in the fall?
It's always been the same.
Why was it the fall that was picked?
Well, there's also the Parade of Homes, right? In the Remodeler Showcase, there are other tours right around that time frame.
That's changed though, because
It
it used to be, there used to be one parade. That was it.
Right.
My dad used to say, back he built in the 70s and 80s, and I don't know when it changed, but then it became a spring and a fall. And then you've got, we could go through the whole history of all the tours. There's so many tours. In some ways you get a little tour fatigued. Sometimes the public, I get concerned as a builder that the client, that the public gets kind of confused. You've got fall and spring parades. Now you have fall and spring artisans.
Right.
So, essentially, you can basically, the only 2 months I'm aware of that doesn't have some sort of a tour is like January and December.
Wow.
Pretty much there's always, that.
And then we maybe should have that tour.
In December.
For cabin country.
Yes.
Like,
Christmas.
let's really see.
Christmas.
Yes.
Come for Christmas cookies.
Yes. Right. I think that's an untapped market.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Oh my word. That would be pretty funny. Only because it's kind of funny. Have any other stories where people have come into a home? You always get, it's open to the public. Public, sometimes they're some odd people and some odd situations. I've had my fair share of, I had this one kid one time. Now that at the time I did not have children, so I didn't understand. Now I sort of understand, but it was still on this parent. So I heard this loud banging upstairs, and I go upstairs, and this kid is in a full karate suit, running through the room and jumping in the air, flying, kicking my sheetrock walls. No, yeah, you can't make this stuff. I got like Jackie Chan in training here, and his dad is like not doing anything. I'm like 28 years old. I have no idea. I've never had kids. I'm not married at this time. I'm like, what is happening? Oh my God. And I think
what did you do?
I think I just appealed to the humanity. I think I must have. I was always pretty good at redirecting kids. In particular, I used to be a high school cross country coach, so maybe that's the deal. And I just told the kid, I said, hey, if you're really good, there's some chocolate for you on the way out if your dad says it's okay. So here I'm just, poor kid. He went to the next house, probably had chocolate and karate kicks
all over over the place.
But I was just like,
Oh, wow.
what is happening? I mean, and people ask the weirdest things. I mean,
do.
sometimes people come through and they're just like, and you just got to let the stuff roll off your back, right? They'll come in through like, why would anyone do that? Or that's the dumbest thing I've ever saw. And I was like, and I was trying to, combat it with kindness. I'm like, you know what? It's not for everyone, but on your home, I'd be happy to design it however you want. And they would just
Nice.
kind of like theatrically, they weren't your person and they walk away or whatever. But in some ways, I actually sort of like controversy because it's like, well, no, I mean, within reason. The point is like most people in our tours get a lot longer than yours. I sort of like the idea that it's 2 days and it's done, right? I think 2 weeks would be perfect. But the parade home is like 4 or 5 weeks. It's really long. It's exhausting.
Oh my gosh.
And it's not only exhausting for me because I believe in being in the home the whole time, but your family, things like that. The artisan I like is 3 weekends. That's actually really nice and a few less days. But where I was going with this is after a while, you're trying to look to be a little bit entertained too. Not only business, but like, hey, can I have some fun here? And so sometimes it's fun when, Grouchy Myrtle will come in
Absolutely.
and just rip your house apart. And you kind of like, a little controversy. I'm okay with this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. An opportunity
Maybe I'm a little
to
abnormal in
educate.
that, but
Yeah.
don't worry. No one will come in and rip your house apart on the first one.
No, I think that's why sometimes the homeowners are like, no, I don't need to be
I could
there.
see that.
Yeah.
Because that does happen. And that's, I would say those are the comments. And most people they're just curious, but they don't have an understanding of the architecture or why that would be done. And sometimes may not feel empowered to like even ask those questions. So then they leave without really getting a full experience. But I think, with Cherry Mash Modern, the home on this year's tour, and Chisel's staff, you can ask anything, right?
Ask away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
That's
this
what they
question, it used to be people would always walk in the front door and they would say, how many square feet? How much does it cost?
Yeah. And
Which
what color is on the wall?
Oh,
Yeah.
my word. So, the smart ones just do a print sheet and you just give it to them right away. So then you have to deal with that. Or you say, here's my card, follow up with an email. This also works. So they never email you. Or 1 out of 500 email you. That's fine. Where I was going with this is they ask you the square footage. And my canned response has always sort of been, and again, I like playing games, as you could probably imagine. And I said, tell you what, I'd be happy to answer your question. Why don't you look through the house, and if you're really
guess.
if you're really close, I'll give you
some chocolates.
I'll give you some chocolates and a kid who's doing karate in the
Yeah,
bonus room.
right.
Take you to the next house.
Totally. Pretty soon it'll
You're
be
going to
my
make
kid.
them work for that answer.
And so what I've noticed with that question, people always guess the home to be bigger than it is.
Oh, interesting.
And part of it has to do with natural light. I'm obsessed with natural light.
What do you mean? The more
People
amount
always-
of daylight? The bigger
People
the
always
home?
tend to guess the home to be bigger than it actually is. So let's say I have a 4,000 square foot house. They'll say it's 4,500 or 5,000 square feet. Or let's say it's 3,000 square feet. They'll say it's 4,000. Most people don't have as good of a grasp on square footage as obviously an architect would or a builder who's building it,
Right.
because we know we just built it. and then also we see enough homes that we kind of get acquainted to it. But it's proportion, it's flow, it's lighting, it's all these other things that and so that's a certain style. There are certain homes like Misa, who is this home that I'll have on tour here next June. That home, I just brought a couple through this morning, and they said the house is roughly 5,000 square feet. And they're, for a big house, this home feels very small, which is the first time I've had people invert it. But I think we're starting to see people, I don't know if this is true for you, Sarah, in terms of, for a long time, for 20 years, everyone wanted more open floor plans. Now we're starting to see the traditional response come back. And I live in a 1919 house, so it's very common there. But like people are like, they want smaller rooms to refuge to. They want a smaller little room to, be separated. Are you finding that's true in architecture?
It's seeming to move in that direction right now.
Yeah.
Although you'll still get people who want to have those big open spaces, but there is that people want to retreat and have a place to retreat within their home. So
Yeah. So similar. Have you been to any other AIA tours in the country other than the one in Minnesota?
I haven't.
I haven't either. I think we had that in the budget one year. We must go
we
travel
must go.
and see how the other probably got shut down.
It got shut down.
What are you'd mentioned sponsors. We couldn't do the Curious Builder podcast without our sponsors. I'm a huge shout out to them, and even collaborating on, Misa, who is our first spec home in 16 years. I'm really excited about it. But a big part of it is the sponsors that you partner with. When you decide to launch the tour, or even now, now you have a viable, tour. Obviously, it's very viable. It's got great recognition. You've got a great following. People are conditioned now. In year 18, it's not a new thing anymore. It's a mature thing. What do the sponsors and the brand partners say about it, and what is kind of their involvement?
Well, it's tricky with the tour. I mean, I'll just go back to the first year because we wanted to have the product from that the sponsors were representative of and make sure those products were in the home. Like if Marvin decided they wanted to sponsor and none of the homes had Marvin windows, that's also just it's a conflict.
That's hard.
So we looked outside of like products even. Room and Board was one of our first and most important sponsors. And still to this day, they host like the kickoff to the tour and they've been a great partner in that. So yeah, I think that was a little tricky in the beginning, but I think the ones that have stuck with it over the years and now the system for finding sponsors, I would say, has much improved from when we started
it.
It's very methodical. When all of the firms submit their entries, you have to put a full list of suppliers in there, and then the AIA will take care of, correlating those and reaching out and saying, hey, did you know of the 18 homes we're considering that are on the tour, you have product in 5. So like those kind of things, I think the tour has gotten a lot smarter with that and representing. And I think you just see the same sponsors come back year after year.
What about your partners on the project? So you've got the staff. So it sounds like you have some AIA staff that are helping with the tours as well.
Yeah, there's always someone at the entry.
Yep.
And then
The architects, obviously.
the architects and their staff.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then what about in terms of the client? So when you approach the clients and say, hey, I'd love this home to be on tour, how does that conversation go?
Well, that is the most important conversation that you have, because if you don't have the client wanting to do
Right.
this, you can't.
Right. Which is
have
true
it.
of all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's a big buy-in for them. And opening up their home like this is always, we just said the stars always have to align for this to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the homeowners can kind of pick and choose too what their level of involvement wants to be. They can be there for the whole weekend. They can be media on TV, or they can choose not to and be a little bit more like,
Yep,
we're just
gonna
going to
go
let you have that.
away.
And it's a huge testament to Marcy and Sarah and their relationship, because it's a huge trust.
100%.
And then it, impacts their schedule. And we've had photo shoots there and styling and all of this. And they've been so gracious.
I think one of the huge advantages that your tour has is the fact that you have finished photography. The home is 100% done. So you
It's
never
lived in.
Right. And so the only thing you really have to worry about is like, and actually the question is, the architect, help like in terms of staging or styling or cleaning the house before and after the tour, like some of those more logistical things. Like I can only speak to myself, like most of the tours your home can't be lived in unless it's a remodel home, which I've certainly done. But if that's the case, then I'm usually having cleaners show up the day before. They have to go out to a hotel or they can't be there. I want the house completely cleaned. I'll bring the design team in. We'll fluff
Get
and
a
buff it
stage.
and make it look
Yeah.
really great.
Fluff and buff.
We're going to have to use that.
We need that.
Your
Fluff and
team
buff.
will love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can have Youngsteads, do a full detail
Yeah,
on the house. So you should go in there with your car and just be like, hey, do you guys do homes as well?
Do you do homes?
Right.
Can you detail a home?
That's great.
How do you guys handle that logistically? Because you know that you want to showcase it represents your brand. And so I get pretty fanatical about like how my brand is represented from the moment they come in the front door. Kind of a funny tangent. And my dad was a totally different builder than I am, but he said he always spent an extra $100 on the front door. Not a real spendy guy there.
Wow.
And his point was is that it's the first thing anyone touches in your house.
Really?
That always
Yeah.
stuck with me. Mainly,
interesting.
I forget less about the dollar amount and more about the concept. Like the first thing anyone touches of your house. So he always said he wanted to have a nice doorknob, which I
Yeah.
just thought was sort of funny.
Okay, Dad.
And yeah, it's okay, Dad. I only bring that up, but like, what's important to you when you get ready for a tour house? You want it to, do all the things, but like, what are some key things that, hey, this would be successful as an architect if this happened in this home?
This is a tricky question. Not tricky, but we really want to showcase what the clients wanted. We have this process, this pattern of life process, which we really dive deep into people's patterns, their wishes, their wants. And so showcasing that is really important. It really is what the client wants and what they want to get out of this house. It's their house. It's not our house.
Yeah, and I think also, a lot of behind the scenes, cordoning off spaces that aren't necessary and telling the story, and we'll be doing that at this home. And, it is a lived-in space, so we don't, We don't send people away. If they want to be there, they can, but really just removing all the barriers of people like getting into spaces they shouldn't be into,
Yep.
but then also making sure, and it's 2 days, so the entire staff can be there. We can be monitoring that. So it feels like that'll be part of the process, and just having people ask questions will be huge. So from the greeting at the front, from the AIA staff person and Chisel, just to know that this is a space where you should be asking questions. You're not expected to know it all. So I hope people leave with that experience, that they, got something about architecture and design out of it and why they would hire an architect.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think it reminded me, I think it's Maya Angelou who has the quote that we hear all the time, that people forget what you say, but they never forget how you made them feel. And I think a home kind of embodies that quote really well, especially when people that don't know that much, because you have your super fans who are architects, like they'll talk about stuff that way above my knowledge base that you'll be like, oh wow, this person clearly knows architecture, or like, they get really enthused, which is great. We love that side. But I also like the person that comes through that has, they came because their friend, Victoria brought them through, and they're like, well, this is, I just happen to be, wow, this is amazing. And like, they come out and they say, you know what, I don't know anything of what I saw, but this home really made me feel welcome. Like that to me has always been
comfortable.
One of my favorite things that people say, because there's so much love that goes into a home, so much emotion, so much of your time. And so of course it's not only that it's appreciated because you care about it, but like that someone could come away with an impact that like somehow a part of you was in that. And I don't know how else to explain it really. My words are not doing a great job, but basically like the home emotes something from them and they leave with it like it left something upon them that they're like, interesting. And I think it's okay if they don't know what it was.
Right.
In fact, I've come at more and more peace that it's okay. In fact, I almost like it more if they can't tell me what they like about it. And they're sort of just befuddled like I am right now, just saying like, I just really like this home, but I really like you, Sarah.
But
That's what you want him to say. We love this home, but we love you.
We really love you.
Yeah, we love you. Your pattern of life.
Yeah. Well, I think it creates a curiosity. And I just want to say with the home on this year's tour, the focus is entertainment. So this couple doesn't have any children, and they are the most welcoming, like, newly moving into this home. All of a sudden they've attracted like all sorts of community around it. And nice. I think that's the vibe that's going to come through, and access to the lake. So it's a, urban setting.
Cabin.
Where in the city is it?
It's on Shady Oak Lake.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the Eden Prairie or Hopkins?
Hopkins.
Okay. Yep. Excellent. What, as we kind of wrap up, is there anything that you're excited about for future tours, or anything that you're kind of like, we talked about evolution, about the small projects, or what do you see as kind of the future, some things that
cabin tours.
The cabin tours.
I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
We can
Let's
wear
have it in January.
And
I
go
know.
around.
We'll see who's really,
Is your mom
really
driving?
tough. My mother can drive.
Okay, sweet. It's a long bus.
Well, Chisel does excellent work with cabins and that whole northern experience. And I'll say it because Sarah's not, but the not so big house and like this, just minimalistic, simplistic idea of what a cabin or a home could be.
I think you'd be onto something, because Minnesota has so many talented architects. It's kind of incredible, embarrassment of riches.
Community.
And there's so much in northern Minnesota, Wisconsin, Okoboji, all these areas that you hear about all the time. It's like the question is for logistically as a tour, that would be extremely challenging.
Well, I know that Dale had a tour up. He had a northern tour, and I don't know how many,
like in the Duluth area.
Yeah. So they went to see a few homes. So we'll have to talk to Dale again.
I think it should be a sauna tour. As well.
There we go.
Saunas are having their day. Except I want to be in the sauna. Like if I'm going to go to sauna, there should be like mini sauna
Do we want you
parties.
in the sauna, Mark?
Sure, why not? Finnish culture. Let's go.
Oh my god.
If not, I'll just hang out in my Misahu sauna. That would be.
But I think the AIA is onto something with the smaller remodel, these smaller spaces, because that can make a huge impact in people's lives.
It's more approachable.
Yeah.
It's no different
Absolutely
than,
is.
they have the remodeler showcase, right? So like in the parade, they have a small section. It's the last weekend and it's only for remodels. And I've had plenty of people both ways, that they'll come just for the remodels but not the new homes, or people come for the new homes. And I've done every single tour under the sun, and so it's like, let's say, except I haven't had an AIA tour. We might actually do one. We're working we're working right now with Christopher Strom on our rural setting.
Wonderful.
And the question is whether we can get access. The driveway's like a mile long,
wow.
So logistically, it's a bit of a challenge. It's a busy county road.
Where is it?
It's off of County Road 6 back in Orono, tucked around in this, and it's just a really long flag lot to get back there. And I'm like, is it go-karts? Is it golf carts? And it's a county road. So do you park? Shuttling is always cuts down your number. So anyway, the point is there's a lot more to logistics than most people think in pulling off a home, especially, and the home is gorgeous. I'd love to showcase it. So we'll try. So that would be, that's the one I have not had yet.
So you have to come to this year's.
Oh, I will. It's a scouting mission, if nothing else. I'm bringing a pair of woolly mittens.
Just in case.
If you were to give advice to, this podcast obviously is around the country. We work with a lot of other builders, architects, designers around the country that don't have tours. If someone was to consider a tour, what are a couple things that you would advise them on how to start a tour? I mean, I've never met anyone that has helped, foundationally start a tour. What advice would you give to them?
Well, make sure you're working with the local AIA.
Yes, 100%.
Definitely you have to get into that group and get working with those people.
Yeah, there's so many good models, right? Like just to look to other models around the country and maybe talk with a few people who've been in it for a while and have experienced all the challenges and have really good models. I mean, it just depends on the location, right? And what that community has an appetite for.
Because a lot of tours started without any sort of help, whether it's AI or builders or anybody. You might have a development and you're like, we're just going to do our own tour. I mean, we did Harvest Honey Hill Harvest Fest. What do we call it? Harvest.
Yeah.
Honey Hill Harvest.
Honey Hill Harvest. Honey Hill Harvest.
Yeah, and I missed that.
So first, Sarah and I are stumbling over this. So we have this 6-lot development.
Yeah.
And the point was we had no home to show. So it was like, how do you gain interest in this? And so we kind of threw like a barn party. We had live music. We had, my point is if I were to answer my own question, I guess, is just do it. Just get a bunch of people. Now, yes, your advice is probably better to ask local, whether it's a builder or architect or designers or whoever. But honestly, if you have a great idea, I think the public is thirsty for ways to connect. So get creative. Sure.
And in person, there's nothing. I mean, a lot of architectural firms, it's just the pretty picture on the website. Again, it creates just sometimes a barrier. If you want to make it accessible, invite people in.
Yeah. Well, I know you and I and Marcy have talked about having people over to a client's home to have a dinner. So say you had an intimate dinner and you just invited some people who might be interested in designing a home. I just think that's a really nice way around the dinner table and within a home to have conversations and just experience being in someone's home.
We did that maybe 10 years ago. A real estate agent I knew did that. And so I was like, that's a great idea. So I would offer to my clients, hey, I'll cater a meal for you and your family. I'll bring my team and you invite anyone you want, friends and family, knock it out, however many you want. And it was interesting. For a while, it kind of went, and then some people were like, it's too busy. And a lot of times you just went through that whole build. So it's a big part of it is asking the when, when do you do it? Because a lot of times you're tired of the build and we want to do it right at the end. Well, the house looks amazing. And it's sometimes the homeowners feel like there's a lot of pressure to entertain that many people. And so it's the right client. I think it's maybe the answer to the question is the same as yours, which is you really need the person who really wants it. And they end up being sort of your super fan, those types of people.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. 1 hour on the dot.
Wow.
Boom. Right there.
We did it.
Perfectly succinct.
So
we'll have everything in the show notes. Again, for those listening that are here locally or maybe want to fly in, it's September 27th and 28th. We'll have all the links in the show notes on Instagram. And we'll probably put a link to the registry page for the AIA Minnesota Homes tour so we can try to help drive some traffic there. Thanks for coming in and sharing the story of what it is to create and run and have a tour.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
fun. Thanks for having us.
All right. Until next time. We've had the podcast now for 2.5, almost 3 years now, and we have a consulting page, one-to-one consulting. You can book my time for 1 hour. Perhaps you've heard a guest where you like one of the topics. Maybe you want an introduction to some of the guests that I've had on. Perhaps you want to talk about branding or marketing or anything that we've covered on the podcast over the last 2.5 years. You can book a time at curiousbuilderpodcast.com. Thanks for tuning in to the Curious Builder Podcast. If you like this episode, do us a favor. Share it with 3 other business owners. The best way that we can spread what we're doing is by word of mouth, and with your help, we can continue to help other curious builders expand their business. Please share it with your friends, like and review online, and thanks again for tuning in.